a long tail boom and an inverted forward swept tail arrangement. This is the 1/5 scale mock-up here, and you can see some of the faceted flat plate technology also used on the F-117. So here we see the strategic long-range bomber. Wingspan was 152, and then again you can see the faceted flat plate technology. So that was the Lockheed Senior Peg. This graphic here illustrates the mismanagement of funds within the military-industrial complex. I just love the leopard skin instrument panel and the solid gold bomb sight, and over here you see our daycare centers and our schools dilapidated and derelict, falling apart, and the funding is completely wrong for these type programs. Tacit Blue was the first quad-redundant fly-by-wire flight control system that used a side-scanning radar. Only one was ever built. It is also at the Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio, so you can see it there. The aft end had 2 canted vertical stabilizers that were canted outward from the center line of the aircraft. Here you also see the exhaust port of Tacit Blue. And then this is the only known photograph showing the interior components and analog gauges of the cockpit section of Tacit Blue. An interesting French art type piece that shows the smooth contouring somewhat similar to what we see in the B-2 stealth bomber. And then originally, prior to '88, during the rollout of the B-2, we actually didn't know what the configuration was. Many thought that it was a single straight trailing edge that you see in this illustration with 4 jet engines, which was correct. And then Rebel Corporation had a sort of a smooth contouring leading edge with a curvature and then a straight trailing edge. There is some evidence to indicate that at least 2 subscale flying prototypes of this particular aircraft actually did make it to the flying prototype stage. This is an interesting 90% scale sheet metal mock-up that was built for the Honda CRX SI release back in 1988, part of an advertising campaign. Approximately 150 feet across, it weighed 200,000 pounds, whole thing built out of sheet metal. And when this particular commercial was aired on television, the phones at the Pentagon blew up because they had just about nailed the correct configuration of the B-2. The wing sweep angle is a bit too steep, and you'll notice over here the chord of the wing is too thick. But generally speaking, without any inside information, Honda did a fairly successful job at recreating what the B-2 actually looked like before it was rolled out to the public. Now this is the actual B-2 here. Interesting to keep in mind that the cost of the B-2 bomber is $2.3 billion per aircraft. That's more than its own weight in gold, and so that's where our tax dollars are going. 172-foot wingspan, and you'll notice here the double W or sawtooth trailing edge, and that's going to become important as we move along here. Again, you can see the front view here with the 2 air intakes and very smooth contouring design, unlike the faceted flat plates that we see on the F-117. Project Senior CJ from Washington Post spoke about unraveling stealth black world. Questions of cost and mission arise amid debate over secrecy. So even they're questioning this debate over secrecy. Now, some of the internal weapons that the B-2 carries. We know that it has conventional and nuclear armaments. We also know the B-2 carries what's called a dial yield, so they can take some of these nuclear weapons and go from 1 megaton all the way up to 10 megatons in yield. The only known illustration that you're going to see of the interior components of the B-2, as far as I'm concerned, no unclassified photograph has ever been showed which displays the engine access panels of the B-2 being removed. This is about the closest that we're ever going to get to see what is actually going on inside the B-2. Now, by 1983, Northrop spent $22.4 billion on research and development for the B-2 program and had nothing to show for it. A year later, in 1984, the U.S. Air Force changed its mind. They decided they no longer wanted a high-altitude bombing platform, but wanted a low-altitude bombing platform. Now that cost all of us $1 billion for the wing redesign. Here you see the single sawtooth trailing edge back in 1983, and then 1 year later, it got changed to the double W sawtooth